Hey man, one of the hardest pills a man ever swallows in the dating game is realizing that not every woman who says she's into him actually means it. Words are cheap, and a woman's actions are what reveal the truth. Many men get blinded by sweet words, affectionate gestures, and the illusion of closeness, but what they miss is the deeper layer beneath, indifference disguised as interest. A woman can smile at you, laugh at your jokes, even give you her time, but if her energy, her consistency, and her emotional investment don't align with her words, she was never really into you in the first place. Men fall for what is said, women fall for what is felt, and if she never felt that spark with you, everything else was just performance. That's why so many men feel betrayed later, because they thought they had something real, but in reality, they were just a placeholder until someone better came along. The first sign she was never really into you is that she was inconsistent from the start. Think back carefully. Did her energy feel hot and cold? One day she was texting you with excitement, the next she went cold and distant. One moment she was leaning in, telling you how much she loved your vibe, and the next she was hard to reach, giving vague excuses about being busy. Real interest is consistent, not conditional. A woman who truly feels desire for a man doesn't forget to reply, doesn't lose track of time, and doesn't ghost for days and then reappear like nothing happened. If she was inconsistent with her attention, it wasn't because she was busy, it was because you were never her priority. And when you are not a woman's priority, no matter what she says, she was never into you the way you hoped. Another brutal sign is that she never made space for you in her life. Women who truly like a man will bend their schedule to make room for him. They'll cancel plans, they'll rearrange, they'll stay up late just to hear his voice. But women who are only half interested keep you on the sidelines. You'll notice that every time you asked to meet up, there was an excuse. Every time you wanted her time, she claimed she was too tired or had something else to do. And yet magically, she always seemed to have energy and availability for the things or people she really wanted. That's the knife in the gut most men ignore. The difference between too busy and not busy for you. If she never carved out real time for you, she wasn't into you. She was just keeping you around to fill silence when her actual priorities weren't available. Pay attention to how she treated your presence. Did she ever truly light up around you? Or did she just seem neutral? Sometimes even slightly bored, like she was doing you a favor by being there? A woman who is into a man cannot hide it. Her body language, her eyes, her tone of voice, everything betrays her excitement. She leans in, she laughs harder, she looks at you like she's trying to memorize your face. But a woman who isn't really into you will give you dull energy. She'll scroll on her phone while with you, give you dry answers, and act as if she's waiting for something better to happen. She may tolerate being with you, but she's not intoxicated by you. And that difference is massive. Real desire is visible. If you had to constantly question whether she was happy with you, that's your answer. She wasn't. Then there's the way she treated intimacy. A woman who desires a man doesn't hold back affection. She doesn't ration kisses or touch like a reward system. But if she was always distant, always hesitant, always making you feel like you were pressuring her simply by showing interest, she was never into you. Men get confused here because they assume women need time to warm up. But the truth is, desire doesn't need permission. It doesn't need endless patience. If she wanted you, you would have known it without question. If intimacy always felt like a negotiation, if her physical affection felt forced, then she was never really feeling you. And once again, she may have said the right words, but her body never lies. A woman's reluctance to connect physically isn't playing hard to get, it's usually her lack of genuine attraction bleeding through. Another unmistakable sign is how she spoke about the future. Women who are into a man will naturally weave him into their future plans. She'll mention trips, experiences, or even small things like next month we should try this restaurant. But if she never included you in the picture, if her language was always me and never we, that's because she didn't imagine you as part of her long-term life. Many men ignore this because they're distracted by the present, but the absence of future-oriented talk is not an accident, it's a signal. She was keeping things short-term, casual, transactional, and that's why the connection always felt fragile, like you could lose it at any second. You weren't her dream, you were her filler, until her dream showed up. And finally, the clearest sign of all, she didn't care if she lost you. Think back. Did she ever fight for you? Did she ever chase when you pulled back? Or did she let you drift away without resistance? A woman who truly values a man will never let him go easily. She'll reach out, she'll fight, she'll try to fix things. But a woman who was never really into you won't even blink. She'll let the connection die and replace you in record time. That's the dagger in the chest, realizing you care deeply, but she didn't care enough to fight for you. And in that moment, you see the truth. She was never yours to begin with. She was only there for as long as it suited her. The tragedy for most men is not that a woman leaves, but that she never truly arrived in the first place. She may have been physically present, her voice on the phone, her body in your passenger seat, her laughter over dinner, but her heart was never in it, and you knew it, deep down. You felt it in the way you were always the one to initiate conversations, always the one to plan, always the one carrying the energy. When you finally stop overthinking and strip away the illusions, you see clearly she was never emotionally invested. She entertained the connection, but she never anchored herself into it. This is why she could walk away so easily, because in her mind there was never really anything to lose. You, meanwhile, thought you were building a story. She was simply passing time. Let's talk about energy, because energy never lies. A woman who is into you can't contain her excitement. She finds ways to be near you, to hear from you, to feel your presence. Her messages are quick, her smile is genuine, and she radiates joy when you give her attention. But when a woman isn't into you, her energy becomes minimal. Her texts are short, her tone is flat, her enthusiasm is borrowed. She may reply, but it feels transactional, as if she's doing you a favor, not because she genuinely wants to connect. That lack of energy is the dead giveaway, and too many men convince themselves to ignore it, telling themselves, she's just busy, or she's just tired. No. A woman who is into you finds energy even when she's exhausted. She'll talk to you at midnight after a long day because she wants to. If she couldn't even muster the spark, she wasn't truly into you. Another painful realization is how quickly she forgot you when you weren't around. Think about this. When you went quiet, did she ever reach out? Did she check on you? Did she notice your absence? Did she even wonder? A woman who is into a man feels his silence like a storm. She notices instantly when his presence fades, but when she was never really into you, your silence doesn't bother her at all. Days can pass, weeks even, and she doesn't flinch. In fact, she almost seems relieved, as if she was waiting for you to disappear. That is a truth most men learn the hard way. When a woman is indifferent, she doesn't miss you, she replaces you. And the sooner you stop confusing tolerance for attraction, the sooner you'll stop wasting time on women who were never really invested in you. One of the most deceptive signs is her use of language. Pay attention to how she talked when you were around. Did she use vague, surface-level words to keep you hooked without revealing her real feelings? Women who aren't truly into you often rely on generic phrases like, "You're such a nice guy," or "You're fun to be around." At first, these sound flattering, but dig deeper. Notice how they lack emotional weight. They never say, "I can't stop thinking about you," or "I feel something different with you." They give you safe compliments that mean little but keep you dangling. And men fall for it because they mistake politeness for passion. Real attraction, however, isn't careful or calculated. It spills out uncontrollably. If her words felt scripted and cautious, that was her way of keeping you in orbit without ever letting you close enough to ignite. Let's also address the brutal reality of effort. Effort reveals everything. Did she ever surprise you? Did she ever do something for you that wasn't expected, that wasn't convenient, that showed she actually thought about you when you weren't around? If not, that silence in her effort speaks volumes. A woman who truly feels for a man can't help but put in work. She'll cook for him, buy him small gifts, write him notes, or even just send a simple message reminding him she's thinking of him. But a woman who was never into you will never extend herself. Everything you got from her felt like the bare minimum, because in her mind, that's all you were worth. And men make the mistake of overcompensating, doing more and more to cover her lack of effort, thinking it will balance out. But it never does, because interest cannot be forced, and effort cannot be begged. Here's another sign most men ignore. She talked about other men in front of you. Think carefully. Did she ever casually mention her ex, her male friends, or guys who hit on her, almost as if she wanted you to know she had options? That wasn't an accident. Women don't bring up other men when they're truly locked in on one guy. They don't even see other men when their heart is captured. But when she's not really into you, she allows those other names into the conversation, sometimes deliberately to keep you insecure, to remind you that she doesn't fully belong to you. Many men try to play it cool and ignore these moments, but the truth is, those were the cracks showing through. If she was ever quick to reference another man in your presence, it was because you were never the only one in her mind, and chances are she was already emotionally invested somewhere else. But perhaps the most devastating realization comes when you see how little she cared about losing respect for you. A woman who is truly into a man fears losing his respect because she knows it could cost her the connection she treasures. But a woman who was never into you will test your boundaries relentlessly. She'll cancel plans last minute, she'll disrespect your time, she'll flake without apology. Why? Because deep down, she doesn't care if she burns the bridge. She knows you care more than she does, and that imbalance gives her permission to mistreat you without fear. Men often mistake these behaviors as mixed signals, but in truth, they are very clear signals. She never valued you enough to protect the bond. Real desire comes with a baseline of respect. If she didn't respect your time, your effort, or your presence, she wasn't into you. She was just keeping you around until she found better. The truth is, most men don't want to accept these signs because they force us to confront the hardest reality. We were never chosen, and that cuts deeper than rejection itself. Because rejection is clear, it's an ending. But being strung along by a woman who was never into you, that's a slow, humiliating erosion. It's the realization that you were pouring heart, time, and energy into someone who was only giving you scraps. And when you look back, you see the imbalance everywhere. You planned the dates, you initiated the talks, you carried the emotion. She just showed up when it suited her. The relationship was never mutual, it was a performance. And once you recognize that, you see why she left so easily. Because she was never really with you to begin with. One of the most overlooked truths is that women don't need to explicitly say, "I'm not into you." Their actions scream it long before their words ever could. But men, caught in the haze of attraction, filter out reality and hear only what they want to hear. When she said things like, "I like spending time with you," or "You're such a good guy," you heard them as signs of affection, when in fact they were diplomatic shields. She was giving you just enough to keep you orbiting, but never enough to let you land. That's how you end up in months-long limbo, where you feel emotionally invested, but she feels nothing beyond casual convenience. This is why so many men are blindsided when she vanishes without explanation. To her, there was never anything to end. To you, it was a relationship. To her, it was just something to do when she was bored. Another brutal sign she was never really into you is how quickly she transitioned into another relationship after leaving you. You thought it would take her months to process the connection, to miss you, to reflect on what she had lost. But instead, she seemed to replace you within days, as if you were an app she deleted and re-downloaded with someone else's name. That speed tells you everything. She was emotionally detached the whole time. The replacement didn't happen after the breakup, it happened during. She was already exploring other options, already entertaining other connections, long before you noticed the distance. What men often misinterpret as heartbreak recovery is actually just exposure to the truth, that her heart was never locked on you. A woman who truly loves you can't pivot to another man so fast. Her soul won't let her. If she moved on like nothing, she was never invested to begin with. Let's talk about the role of excuses, because excuses are the silent killers of clarity. A woman who isn't into you will lean on excuses constantly. "I'm just really busy with work. I'm not ready for a relationship right now," or the classic, "You deserve someone better." Men take these at face value because they don't want to face the harsher reality. She just doesn't want you. Excuses are her way of softening the blow, of avoiding responsibility, of easing her guilt. But when you strip away the surface, the truth is raw. If she truly wanted you, she would make time, she would fight for it, she would find a way. Attraction doesn't get delayed by schedules, and desire doesn't vanish because of stress. When a woman wants you, she doesn't need to justify her inconsistency. But when she doesn't, excuses become her weapon to keep you pacified until she's ready to cut the cord entirely. Perhaps the most heartbreaking realization is when you remember how she reacted to your vulnerability. Think back, when you opened up to her, when you shared your struggles, your fears, your dreams, did she lean in with empathy, or did she pull away, almost irritated by the weight of your emotions? A woman who truly wants a man feels honored when he lets her into his inner world. She cradles that trust carefully. But a woman who was never into you feels burdened by it. She looks for the exit because she was never there to hold your soul, only your attention. Many men confuse her disinterest in vulnerability as just not being emotional, but in reality, it's proof she was never emotionally available to begin with. When she was indifferent to your truths, that was the loudest message. This was never about building something real. Here's another sign that burns once you see it in hindsight. She never introduced you to her inner circle. Did you ever meet her closest friends, her family, her mentors, or did it always feel like she kept you tucked away in a separate box, never merging her world with yours? A woman who is genuinely into a man can't resist sharing him with the people she cares about. She brags about him, she shows him off, she makes him part of her wider life. But a woman who was never truly into you keeps you hidden. She compartmentalizes because you were never a permanent fixture in her plans. You were temporary, and she knew it. That's why you never heard her say, "Come meet my family," or "I told my best friend about you." If you were kept in the shadows, it wasn't an oversight, it was intentional. Because deep down, she knew she was never keeping you. And this brings us to the harshest truth of all. She was always half in. She gave you fragments, never the whole. A smile here, a touch there, a weekend together when it was convenient. Enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to ground you in certainty. That's why you felt anxious around her. That's why you always questioned where you stood. Because your intuition knew what your heart refused to accept. She was never fully present. When a woman is into you, you feel it. It's not confusing, it's not unstable. It doesn't leave you awake at 3 a.m. analyzing her last text. It feels natural, secure, effortless. When she's not into you, it feels like chasing a ghost. And the longer you ignore that truth, the deeper the cut becomes when she finally walks away. Men need to understand that attraction is not about what she says, it's about what she shows. Words are easy, but patterns tell the truth. Did her actions align with her promises? Did she show up consistently, or did she only appear when it benefited her? This is where most men go wrong. They believe the words, they ignore the actions, and then they feel betrayed when reality catches up. But reality was always there, in her patterns. A woman who is truly into you doesn't need to convince you with words. Her actions prove it every single day. If you constantly felt the need to interpret her, that was already your answer. A woman who is genuinely invested never leaves you questioning her desire. What men often don't realize until much later is that her lack of investment wasn't personal. It was simply the truth of her desire. Women don't operate on logic when it comes to attraction. They don't choose men based on fairness or effort or how nice he is. They choose based on emotion, instinct, and chemistry. And if she didn't feel that with you, she could never force herself into it. That's why she never really let you in, no matter how much you gave. And while it feels like a rejection of who you are, it's not. It's a reflection of her own wiring. The lesson isn't to become bitter, but to recognize that chasing someone who was never into you is the greatest betrayal you can commit against yourself. So here's the lesson. Stop chasing potential. Stop holding on to what you hoped she felt, and look at what she actually gave. If she wasn't texting back, if she wasn't initiating, if she wasn't investing, that's your answer. Don't wait for her to spell it out. Don't cling to words she said months ago while ignoring how she treats you now. Men waste years because they believe love can be negotiated, that with enough patience or persistence, she'll eventually see your value. But attraction doesn't work like that. It's either there or it isn't. If she was never into you, you can't force it. And the longer you delay accepting that, the more time you give away to someone who never planned to keep you. The final sign, and perhaps the most liberating realization, is how peaceful your life feels once she's gone. Think about it. All the anxiety, the confusion, the second guessing, the endless overthinking, it vanishes when she leaves. At first, it feels like loss, but in truth, it's freedom, because now you see clearly what you were trapped in, a one-sided investment. She was never really into you, and the entire connection was built on your effort. Once you let go of that illusion, you reclaim your energy. You stop begging for crumbs and start demanding feasts. And that shift is what transforms men. When they stop chasing women who were never into them and instead channel that energy into themselves, they finally attract the kind of woman who doesn't just tolerate them, but treasures them. That's the kind of love worth waiting for.